Todd, I had it written down here to insert my Praetorian Jack joke.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
I have no idea what it was. I didn't write it down because I didn't want you to see it on the little form because I wanted it to be like, kind of spontaneous. Can't remember it now.
But instead, it's DOA, boys.
Hello and welcome to Towel Capes. I'm Cody Nestor. He's Todd Hill.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Towel Capes.
And today we're here to talk about George Miller's Furiosa, a Mad Max saga. Todd, take it away. What did you think the story was?
It's the origin of Furiosa with some wasteland warlords, power struggles kind of sprinkled in.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think it's a fair assessment. So, so coming off the back of last week, we talked about Mad Max Fury Road. Obviously, Furiosa's in cinemas now. We've seen it. To kind of start off here, I know, reviews have been pretty positive. Mm-hmm. I've seen some 10s. I've seen some 7s, some 8s, some 9s. Seems to be kind of a little bit of a range, but mostly everybody's tending to this is a good film side of things.
Yeah.
Not to get too far ahead, what did you think of the first 45 minutes-ish of this film? Because not really what I expected. What did you make of it?
It was kind of a slow burn for me. I wasn't expecting to have that much of the movie be a real young Furiosa, like, the child Furiosa. Mm-hmm. Kind of takes a while to get going, I thought. Yeah,
it kind of opens with, obviously she comes from the green place. We see how she's originally abducted, that was kind of hinted to in Mad Max Fury Road.
Yeah.
I guess it's her mother and another kind of lady from the green place kind of take off after the guys, the raiders on motorcycles that kind of take her. But yeah, it's about a good solid, I would say 30, 45 plus minutes of just trekking through the desert, trailing these guys on bikes, taking them out slowly, finding Furiosa, finding her at the Dementis' camp, getting her out of there. I don't know if I would say it. I mean, it's not boring. It definitely, I guess to compare it to Fury Road, I mean, how can't you? Because, I mean, we're in the same universe, obviously, there's going to be a lot of comparisons to Fury Road, but, Fury Road just kind of right off the bat, it starts and it never kind of lets up, and you're kind of immediately kind of, you're drug into the story, you're invested from the beginning, and you're right along with it, where this, I feel like it takes a while for me to really get invested with I think that's story. Fair, yeah. And I think that kind of pretty much happens kind of by the time it kind of picks up momentum right around the time Dementis is, he takes his horde to the Citadel.
Yeah.
That's the kind of, and that's again about 45 or so minutes in, Furiosa's been kidnapped, her mother's been killed by Dementis and his goons, and you start to kind of pick up momentum then. So, I think that's a problem overall with this film is that it doesn't need to be 2.5 hours.
Yeah.
When we went in, you were like, how long is this movie? It's I figured it'd be about 2 hours like Fury Road was. No, 2.5 hours. And you could easily cut about 30 minutes out of that.
Yeah, that was one of my issues was the runtime, yeah.
I mentioned it kind of picks up when we get to Dementis when he kind of takes his horde to the Citadel. So I noticed what I'll refer to as edge of cringe. I'll call them edge of cringe kind of special effects, especially in that kind of skirmish below the Citadel. Did you notice anything off to you, or was it just me?
Is it kind of where they're sort of kind of swinging down with those kind of grapple hooks and hoists kind of lifting up cars?
Yeah, a lot of war boys kind of jerkily coming down on pole vaults and lines, and it looks a little wonky and jerky in places. It kind of stood out to me as again, it's not full cringe, but it's it's edge of cringe to me, Todd. I was
it's right on that line.
I was that looks a little bit rough to me compared to some of the visuals that we're used to seeing from a Fury Road or some of the other Mad Max films, obviously, that don't rely so much on special effects or heavy effects.
Right.
What did you make of the whole scene in general? Was there anything else in the film that stuck out to you as cringe or edge of cringe?
Honestly, I think that was the only one. And like I say, it was almost there. It was borderline, but nothing that really took me out of anything cinematically that I noticed.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I didn't hate it or anything. It was just, there was a couple of little moments throughout the film that weren't as solid effect-wise as Fury Road.
Right.
And I feel Fury Road we talked about is about 80% practical. I felt this did lean more into special effects than practical effects
Yeah,
than
definitely.
Fury Road is. Like it's not like way more. It's not like the special effects are heavier than the practical, but it's like it's definitely more, or you feel that it's more than like
Right.
a Fury Road.
Definitely, yeah.
We've got some returning characters, and Morton Joe.
Yes.
Pretty much almost everyone you see in Fury Road is back in some form or another. Morton
Capacity, yeah.
Joe, his sons, the Bullet Farmer, the People Eater, all those folks. For me, Morton Joe looks wise, I'm good with it.
Mm-hmm.
His voice though, what did you think?
I honestly had a hard time when you kind of mentioned that, going back and remembering what the Fury Road voice was. So obviously, to me, it wasn't that big of an issue.
Right. Yeah. So Hugh Keysburn, he played Toe Cutter in 1979's
Right.
Mad Max. He came back to play Morton Joe in 2015's Fury Road. He passed away in 2020. I think at age 73, I believe he passed away. So he obviously was not able to return for the character of Morton Joe. So you have a younger actor now playing and stepping into the role of a Morton Joe. And for me, I definitely noticed the voice, and it's definitely way different than what you got
Okay.
before. And this is one of those cases I'm like, I could see myself advocating for like some kind of AI voice usage there
Okay,
to
yeah.
kind of more mimic that voice, because
Yeah.
it just, the look they nail, but the
Voice was
the
off.
voice just wasn't off. It's like almost like watching Darth Vader without James Earl Jones'
Oh,
voice.
shit, okay.
Like you can maybe get somebody that's pretty close,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't get somebody exactly. So like, I don't know. It was just different for me. But
Okay.
that's something that kind of stood out. But again, it's not the film's fault. The film is doing what it can with the fact that the actor that played that role
Has passed on.
Yeah, has passed on. Performance wise, Todd, let's get into some of those. What did you think of Chris Hemsworth? He plays Dr. Dementus. He's our big bad or main villain here. What did you think of Chris Hemsworth coming into the Mad Max saga and his role as Dementus?
I think here we may have hit my first snag.
Okay. All right. Do explain.
Okay, it's not that I didn't appreciate him as a character or what he did in the film. I just feel like there was a lot of time spent with him, I think. Maybe more that could have been used with expanding on Furiosa, how she rose through the ranks of being at the Citadel, getting into the position where she was a driver of the war rig. I kind of feel like, and in some parts, it kind of seemed like he was just like a Carnival Barker on steroids kind of performance with the big, the mic and
Right. Yeah, he's definitely got a showman quality
Yeah.
to him. Yeah, I think you're right. Like, I don't mind him overall, and I don't mind Dementus. He is different, I think, than other Mad Max villains.
Yeah.
He's not so much a just evil for evil's sake type of villain. He's very much one of those kind of like, seems like he's doing what he's got to do to like keep control. Like
Yeah.
he doesn't seem like he so much enjoys some of the bad things that he does, as he looks at them like as a necessity of like living in the wasteland and again trying to keep control of things. But like I didn't hate it overall, but I do agree with you. Like you spend a lot of time with him, and you spend a lot of time with him that doesn't evolve his character or like add any kind of meaningful depth, because his backstory is that like he carries around his little teddy bear and like he gives it to Furiosa a couple times. He's got it like chained to his crotch at most of the points in the film. But like his backstory, he had a family, he had a wife and kids presumably, and like he lost them, and like everybody else that's lost in this world that's still around, like he has kind of been twisted from that, like from what's happened in his past. But like that's about the only characterization you get for him, other than like performance based stuff, which is just him being a little like eccentric and different and having a big nose.
Maybe a smidge over the top, and it's not that I hated him here or I hated the performance. I just, like you just kind of touched on, I think it kind of detracted from, I think, some other things I would have rather saw.
Yeah, for a movie called Furiosa, there's not much Furiosa.
That's exactly right. She's not in it a whole hell of a lot.
Yeah, because you spend, I guess, again, 45 minutes with a young actress playing Furiosa. Then you transition into Anya Taylor-Joy's performance as Furiosa about an hour into the film. But we're also spending a lot of time with Dementus, the politics of running Bullet Town, Gas Town, the Citadel versus Dementus.
Right.
There's a lot more of that stuff than there is Furiosa and what's going on with her. She's kind of almost like kind of in a way just kind of there.
Yeah.
In a way, she's not really the thing that's driving
The narrative
The
much.
narrative. She's
Yeah.
just kind of like along for the ride, and her story spins out of the events that happen. Which, I mean, to some that might not be a negative, and I'm not saying it's necessarily a negative, but to me, that's how it really is. She's not really the driving force of the narrative most of the time. She's just kind of embroiled in what's going on and
Caught up in it.
Dementis versus Immortan Joe type of stuff.
Right.
So again, I don't hate Chris Hemsworth's performance, but I mean, on the tier of Mad Max villains, it's probably lower.
Right.
It's nowhere near like an Immortan Joe. Like, you know, it's different and weirder than like a toe cutter, I guess.
Yeah.
Those kind of things, or like any of the people that you see in like the Road Warrior. But then they still feel like the characters from like the Road Warrior still kind of feel like they fit better in that film than like maybe this character does in this film, if that makes sense.
I think I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So again, I don't hate it, but it's not on the same level again as like what we've seen before.
Right.
And it doesn't really bring a depthful character in and like evolve it in a meaningful way over the film. He's just kind of a weird eccentric guy with a big nose doing what he's got to do.
Right.
If you're all right with that
Yeah.
trade-off, that's fine.
Yeah.
Todd, really important note here. What do you think about people leaving a like and subscribing to the video?
I'm all for that. Put the pedal to the metal
Yeah.
since we're reviewing Furiosa and do all that good stuff.
Yeah, if you would hit that like button on the video, subscribe to the channel. It really does help us out. Lets YouTube know that you're interested in the content, and if you're still here listening, we appreciate you sticking around with us. So Todd, at one point, Child Furiosa. Not grown Anya Taylor-Joy Furiosa yet. She cuts her hair off. She takes the hair and kind of makes it into a wig and glues it onto like a wig. And then she uses that to escape Rictus, who we've seen in Fury Road, Rictus Erectus, and his brother Scrotus.
Yes.
But focusing just on Rictus, he's the big dude from Fury Road, who is now set up to be some kind of kitty fiddler pedophile.
It does seem that way.
In this, because he Immortan Joe takes Furiosa in from Dementis to kind of be a future bride of his. If she grows into a beautiful woman, I think he says she can be a bride for him.
Right.
Rictus kind of sneaks into the little vault where they keep his brides and kind of takes her out, again, kind of hinting at he's got some pretty nefarious stuff in mind for her. She uses her, her fake wig to like escape from him as he like pulls it off, and she runs away after he's like unshackled her. She then she hides from him. She hides around the Citadel, and then she joins up with the Citadel workers, like kind of posing like as a boy.
As a guy.
'Cause she's got she's a younger girl. She hasn't she's at the age of like not developed, so she can easily kind of fit into a role of like a boy, looking like a boy. She's like a kind of like an Arya Stark in early Game of Thrones seasons, kind of set up here. For me, though, my question to you, did you have trouble following, who was supposed to know or not know?
Who she was or what she was?
Yeah. Not only was she a boy or girl, but, know and not know in those early times, was she Furiosa? Was she not Furiosa? Who she was? did Immortan Joe and the rest of the people there, was she introduced to them as Furiosa in the beginning? I can't remember because, it's hard to follow when not even just in these early child scenes, but also it's hard to follow when she becomes more of the Furiosa we know and starts taking on different roles of who knows who she actually is or not. Does that make sense? How did you feel about was it hard to follow for you? Because for me, I'm because she's running from Rictus, but then she hides and then she becomes this kind of whole other character, but then she steps back into a world of running the war rig and stuff, and I'm being called Furiosa, and I'm
it was a little confusing.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning, when she's abducted, of course, she's Furiosa, child Furiosa. Her mother calls her that. She knows her that. But I don't think Dementis ever knew that. He called her Little D.
Yeah, because they didn't
Little Dementis.
Yeah, they really didn't say anything to him. And I can't remember. I guess, I don't know. I guess he introduces her to Immortan Joe and them, Justice.
I think did he say it was his daughter when they?
I think he just said his daughter. I don't think anyone ever got introduced as Furiosa. So I'm guessing that's how she was able to hide for so long. Once she become a fake little boy or whatever, and started working with the workers around the Citadel, and then I guess just come into her original name as she started working with a character we'll talk about later.
It's like somewhere that we didn't. She's like, look, guys, I'm not a boy. My
Yeah.
real name's Furiosa.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
she does step out of that boy role because she Praetorian Jack, who's a character that becomes her mentor,
Kind of takes her under his wing.
and he obviously knows she's a woman, and he obviously knows her name is Furiosa, and he starts to learn about her past. But yeah, at some point she goes from a boy who works lifting cars into the Citadel to a woman that's driving the war rig, and like. Once she does, like no one ever spotted her again, like Rictus or Morton Joe, and be like, wasn't that the girl that was locked in the vault that I was wanting to be my bride?
Yeah, wasn't that the one that had designs? I mean, that kind of, honestly, it gets a little bit glossed over.
Yeah. And then, like, I mean, you know, and there's nothing set up to be like, obviously Joe would know who's driving his war rig, right?
You would think so.
Like, it's nothing set up to be like, who is that ugly girl driving my war rig? I mean, she's still an attractive woman.
Right.
So why is he not having her be a bride at that point? Does he like, oh, she's better served being my war rig driver or my mentee of Praetorian Jack? I don't know. It's just a little, you get a little lost in the sauce with it all, I guess.
And you would think it, you know, there's not that many pretty girls around that he's got as his brides. He would notice when one of them was missing.
yeah, exactly. Like we never hear in the film like no one ever asked what happened to the little girl that they put into the vault to be my bride later. It never gets brought up with Rictus. Morton Joe never discusses it. It's just kind of all that kind of stuff is like glossed over a little bit, and like I felt like again a little lost in the sauce about like what does everybody know when she's little, and then why does no one pick up on the fact that she was missing from the safe? And then why is it never addressed when she becomes Furiosa and she's obviously a pretty attractive woman, even though, is that why she puts the grease on her face to hide her stuff?
Could be.
I don't know. It's just a little confusing. Like it's not as well mapped out as I think that it should be here, Todd. Anyway, moving past that point, we can't obviously discuss this film without mentioning Anya Taylor-Joy as Furiosa. What did you think of her performance as Furiosa? Obviously coming from, she's a younger Furiosa, growing into the Furiosa we know in Fury Road, played by Charlize Theron. What did you think of her performance here?
Honestly, you know, as we've already kind of touched on, we don't get a lot of her as what I would say full-blown, you know, here I am, robotic arm Furiosa.
Yeah.
But, I mean, what we do get, I think she does a good job. I think she did real good with the role.
Yeah, I mean, she has the look for it. I think she has the acting ability. This is one of those roles, though, that, like, really doesn't take a whole lot of acting ability, like, in terms of this, like, as much as it does Fury Road, because she kind of steps into that silent protagonist Mad Max role a lot of the time here. She doesn't have a lot to say. She has a lot to do, but not so much a lot to say.
Very light on the dialogue.
Yeah, very few lines for Furiosa here. It's a lot of acting with your expressions and your eyes and stuff like that. And then I think it's a problem with like a lot of sequels or prequels, especially prequels, really, not sequels. This film also does that thing where like, you know, the character has to be in the exact position at the end of this film as they were in the beginning of the next film we see them in. Because literally this film ends where, like, at one point she goes from the Furiosa look she's kept this whole film to, like, well, now it's time for me to cut my hair short like Charlize Theron, fix my robot arm up.
Right.
Start wearing the same exact clothes you'll see me in the next film.
Exactly.
And getting ready to, like, we actually even see her, like, steal the darkened silhouette brides of like the actresses like from Fury Road. You don't see the actresses, but you see the silhouettes of actresses that look very much similar to those original actresses, and we see them sneaking aboard the war rig at the end. I'm never really a big fan of films doing that. Like, it's like in the prequels of Star Wars. It's like, well, Yoda loses. It's like, I must go into exile now. I must stay on Dagobah for 48 years. And, like, you know, Obi-Wan's got to go to the desert. And it's like everyone has to be in the exact position that they start the next film from. That's another little problem that I have with this film is like by the end of it, she has to do all the things that you know she has to do to be in Fury Road next.
Because you know there's going to be some stakes of some kind, but you know that not a lot's going to happen to her because obviously she has got to be alive to be in Fury Road.
Yeah.
So she's going to be abducted, we know, and she's going to at some point lose that arm.
That's the hook here is like what little adventures did she get up to before Fury Road? How does she become the badass character we know in Fury Road?
Yeah.
And how does she lose that arm? That's your hooks here.
That's your hooks.
That's really your hooks here. Todd, I had it written down here to insert my Praetorian Jack joke.
Okay, I'm ready for this.
I have no idea what it was. I didn't write it down because I didn't want you to see it on the little form because I wanted it to be like, you know, kind
Spontaneous.
of spontaneous. Can't remember it now.
But instead, it's DOA, boys.
So I'm going to move on to my next question. So what scenes or sequences to you stood out as maybe really good or maybe really bad? I'm not sure your opinion on it. We haven't really talked about this film before now.
You know, and that's another thing for me about this film is there's a lot of good little scenes. There's a lot of, you know, small skirmishes, but there's no like, you know, in Fury Road you had that the canyon run, the canyon battle. Then you had the big one going back to the Citadel. But here, I mean, there's not really I would say a slam bang, just blow my socks off kind of sequence.
Yeah, I mean, like the big sequences are like I would say the first time she's aboard the war rig, and she's like tucked underneath it with a motorcycle. She's using it basically as a means of escaping the Citadel, I guess.
Now that one was good.
So like you get a kind of a longer sequence where some of they were formerly Dementis's minions, but they've kind of split off from Dementis and formed their own faction, and they're attacking the newly created, like, huge, big, badass, like, chrome-plated war rig that Immortan Joe and his folks have created to, like, haul gas or haul bullets or haul food back and forth to Gastown, Bullet Farm, and all this stuff. And you get, like, a pretty prolonged, like, kind of chase sequence there that's, like, it's good, but it never rivals anything you see in Fury Road.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's because it's not executed as well or if we're just like, we're kind of been spoiled by Fury Road and how good Fury Road was. I'm not sure what's more likely. Is that
true?
Is it just not as good a sequence? Is it a fine sequence that's not as good as something in Fury Road? Or is it just because we've seen it before done better? I'm not sure which.
I think my personal favorite is just that kind of flee from the Bullet Farm where her and Praetorian Jack's in that one car and Dementis is after in that monster truck.
Yeah.
All because I was kind of forgot about the arm and I really wasn't thinking about the arm was going to happen yet.
Yeah.
And then they kind of get where the monster truck kind of overtakes them and almost runs over the back of the car and it kind of, her arm gets pinned between that truck and the car and I thought she was going to lose the fucker right there.
Yeah, I thought
it got me.
Yeah, I thought the arm would be lost completely right there. We kind of see it later, which I'll let you take us through. Yeah, the scene before, I think, at the battle at the Bullet Farm, at Dementis, for all his kind of quirks and seemingly like his kind of ineptitude in a way, like he seems to be kind of inept, but he's really not. Yeah. He's able to take over Gastown early in the film. He's able to like actually take over the Bullet Farm too later on. And there's a really pretty good scene in that kind of like, I guess it's like the Bullet Farm is kind of like what what's the word I'm looking for? Like
ammunition depot.
Yeah, it's like an ammunition depot built out of like a mine.
Yeah, auto mine. Yeah,
it's kind of like a mine you would see somewhere in mining, like ore and stuff, obviously for the bullets and stuff like that. So we get to see the Bullet Farm really for like the first time on screen, and like that whole sequence where they try to drive the war rig there, Praetorian Jack and her, and they kind of get ambushed. And they've also set it up in the film, in the context of the film, that during that run, she's kind of been working with Praetorian Jack long enough. He makes a deal with her to like, basically, I'm going to be your mentor. I'm going to teach you everything you need to know because like you need to know some shit to be able to survive out here. Yeah. And if you work with me, once I feel like you're ready, I'll help you escape myself and you can go wherever. And it goes pretty quick from like, hey, let's make this deal to like the next scene is like, you're ready. You're ready.
I thought about that too. The next time, you're good, girl.
Yeah. It's literally they meet in the war rig for the first time. She helps him like survive that war rig skirmish. He makes the deals like, hey, you work with me, I'll help you get out of here. I'll let you know when you're ready. You can go. Next scene, you're ready.
You're ready.
You're ready. Good luck.
I got you some gas. I got you a car.
Yeah, Godspeed. And that's really what happens on that little run up to the Bullet Farm. That he kind of makes all the war boys switch out to different vehicles and puts her in the pursuit vehicle, which is going to be her like way to escape. And leave the group. But he gets kind of set upon by Dementis and all them in the Bullet Farm, and there's a big action sequence, probably the best one in the film to me. I agree with you there. You mentioned how she kind of lost the arm and or is in the process of losing the arm. Do you want to take us through the scene and how she actually loses the arm and what happens to Praetorian Jack along the way too?
So, like I say, it gets damaged when Dementis overtakes him, and he kind of takes him into custody. He kind of chains up Furiosa, got her kind of chained up by both arms, the bad one and the good one. And Praetorian Jack, he just kind of proceeds to chain him up behind, I think it was a vehicle, not a motorcycle, right? just a normal
I
vehicle?
think so. Maybe like a little kind of desert kind of cart thing or something
Yeah,
like that.
and they
you
just
know?
start, at first he kind of keeps up pace with him, but eventually he just winds up being drugged, and he's pretty much just drugged till we don't see him again, but it's implied he's drugged or he's nothing but, maybe a hand or two left on those chains.
Yeah, because also too, Dementis, like he set up through the film, he has like a lot of like dogs with him. He also puts
He
those
turns those
dogs on
dogs
him
loose on him too,
as
yeah.
they're like kind of eating on him as he's
Yeah.
being drugged in a circle around her.
So
yeah.
left to your imagination, there's not much left of a Praetorian Jack, but
Yeah, which is a good scene.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff is really strong, I would say.
but all that has stirred up a big old cloud of dust, and it's kind of just hanging in the air. And Dementus kind of looks over, is like, "What do you think about this, Furiosa?" And Furiosa's gone.
Yes.
All that's left there is just that mangled, damaged arm.
Yeah, just her damaged, mangled arm. And her and Praetorian Jack, they were set up to have a mentor relationship at first. It kind of blossomed into more of a romantic relationship, you could see.
Yeah.
They never they never have sex or anything on screen that we can see, but there's definitely a care in between the two. And
Yeah.
it's set up kind of as a romantic relationship a little bit, and his death has an effect on her, but all that stuff I thought was pretty good. Like the dynamic between those two, I thought was pretty good. Praetorian Jack does have a little bit of a Mad Max vibe. He's kind of like almost dressed like Mad Max in a
He
way.
does have the look. There was that one scene where he's kind of walking up the road towards her. He almost looks just exactly like Mad Max.
Yeah, exactly. For those wondering, Mad Max is in the film.
He is.
He's in it for about 45 seconds. He's very much shot from very far away on top of a hill, kind of watching Furiosa kind of walk through the desert. He doesn't know she's Furiosa, but just watching a girl with one arm walk through the desert, basically.
Yeah.
But he's there for about 45 seconds. It's not Tom Hardy. It's just, a guy in a Mad Max costume with the Interceptor standing beside of him or sitting beside him, not standing.
Max can't be bothered to show up in a prequel. I mean, come on.
Exactly. But I mean, for those wondering, what did Mad Max pop up? Yes, it wasn't a setup or anything for Fury Road. It was just he's just hanging out in the wasteland somewhere. But yeah, I thought how she lost the arm, I thought all that stuff was interesting. I thought the scene was handled pretty well with all that stuff. Again, Dementis, he doesn't seem to take really so much joy in killing and torturing Praetorian Jack. He just kind of goes and sits on the hood of the truck and just waits there until I guess he kind of proves his point to her and to everybody else of what's going on, and then he calls for it to be over. And by the end, again, the arm is just dangling and
she's gone.
And she's gone, exactly. You want to take us through the ending of the film, Todd? Talk us through that, just kind of from that scene, because we're pretty much in the third act at this point.
So I think at some point it sets off, and we're kind of just told about this more than we see. Was it like a 40-day battle between both sides?
There's a character in the film, I forget his name, but he's basically the learned man of the wasteland. He's one of Dementis' right hands he looks after, because he's very learned and he knows a lot about the history of the world and history of the wasteland, and he kind of narrates kind of the big battles through the years. And in one of them, the most recent he comes to is the 40-day wasteland battle, and you kind of see a compilation of it, and it's not really gone into, which I think that would have been interesting.
Now that would have been awesome
to actually see.
Yeah.
Cut out the first 45 minutes of this movie, and then maybe Furiosa takes part in that 40-day battle too. Becomes more of a badass, you know what I mean? That is more interesting a concept than a lot of things in this film. But anyway, take us through it.
So basically that has come to an end, and we kind of see Anya Taylor-Joy, as full Furiosa now.
Cuts her hair,
She cuts
puts on
her hair,
her Fury Road clothes,
puts on the suit,
makes her arm.
And she kind of sets off. She gets kind of a shitty vehicle to leave the Citadel, but she's out, and she's back in the desert, and she's going to track down Dementis and end him once and for all. And she does. She goes, she hunts him down. They have some good little banter back and forth, and it's kind of, in the end, there's kind of like a voiceover, and it's like a gentleman talking about, some people debate what really happened to Dementis that day. Did she just shoot him point blank in the head? Did she do this? But we're kind of left to see, and we're kind of told that she brought him back to the Citadel. And earlier in the movie, it's set up as a child. Her mother gives her, I think it was a peach seed.
Yeah, peach pit.
And a peach pit. And she's kept that thing through the whole movie, sometimes hiding it in
her
cheek of her mouth.
Asked her to promise her that she'd plant it one day.
Yeah. And so she plants the tree and allows it to grow through the torso of Dementis.
Yeah.
And we see him as almost a shriveled, almost corpse-like at the end.
Yeah, and with a tree growing through the middle of him.
And I think she pulls the first peach from it, and that's when she goes and give some of it to the
Now
brides.
now it's time for Fury Road, baby.
And that's time to lead on into Fury Road as she leads the ladies on over to the war rig and they're getting out of Dodge.
Yeah. I didn't mind the ending. Like, I thought the ending was good. Like, there's some good scenes on the dune with her riding around and chasing them, and it's like there's a moment where she's got to figure out which one is Dementus because he's like changed his look. He swapped his clothes with another one of his minions, and she kills the two wrong ones and then goes after the right one. And then she actually gets the drop on him, like he's kind of like tinted himself up in a way, like made a makeshift tin out of his clothing and his motorcycle. She actually sneaks in at night, like cuts a hole in his water canteen, takes the bullets out of his gun. And basically, she just sets about torturing him for a while. Like, she, runs him through the desert, and that's where we're left to, like, did she shoot him? Did she not? Nope, she planted a tree in the middle of it, which is cool. Which is
cool.
Good.
It was a cool scene.
Yeah, they need to go back and do some kind of George Lucason with Mad Max Fury Road and change it and just have one scene in the Citadel where you hear somebody being like, ah, and they're like, is that to do with the tree going through the middle of him? Just really connect them, Todd.
The special edition.
Yeah, the special edition of Fury Road. Yeah, I mean, I thought, again, this is not a bad film. It has problems. I've seen some 10s, and not to spoil our reviews on it, but this is not a 10.
No, I didn't think so either.
It's a visually stunning film.
As always,
just as much as Fury Road was, if not more in some capacity. The effects are a little wonky in parts, but it's not a masterpiece of a film. It has problems. It has pacing problems. It has few story problems, and it has the problems of its focus. For a film that's supposed to Fury Road, it's Mad Max in title, but it's not a Mad Max. It's not a Mad Max focused film. Yeah. It's definitely a co-led film. It's definitely as much of a Furiosa film as it is a Mad Max film. This is Furiosa in name and supposed to be about Furiosa, and you don't really get enough Furiosa if you ask me, because the good meat in the middle stuff, the after you cut around the fat of young Furiosa and Furiosa that has to be Charlize Theron in Fury Road, that middle piece, the good meat that you want there, you don't get enough of that.
Exactly.
To me, and that's really kind of the problem is for me. So, Todd, you want to move on to reviews and final thoughts?
Yeah, let's do it.
Give us your review score for Furiosa Mad Max Saga, and based on your score, tell us why this is better than, as good as, or not as good as Fury Road.
My score for this is a 7. I think this is a good, solid entry in the Mad Max series. As we've kind of touched on, I think there's some pacing issues here. I think the runtime really hurt this film. I don't think you needed that extra 30 minutes. And like I kind of said, I don't hate Dementus in this movie. I think Chris Hemsworth is a good actor. I think he did a good job. It's not your typical Mad Max villain, but it kind of took away what I kind of showed up for, which was Furiosa. I wanted to see more of her rise through the Citadel, maybe how she came to be there, a little bit more explained, a little bit better, rising to be the driver of that war rig, maybe taking part in that badass 40-day battle we never got to see.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think this is another good, solid entry. It's no Fury Road, and I'm going to give it a 7.
Yeah, I was really interested to see where you were with your review score, because I come out of this and immediately in my head when we left the movies that night, I'm like, this is a 7.
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder if Todd, is he going to be higher on it? I didn't figure you'd be lower than that. I felt like, is Todd going to be at 8 or 9 for this? And I'm like, because we talked about it just a little, we would make little comments, little snide comments about certain aspects of the film. Yeah, exactly. But we don't really talk about films like that anymore. We hold off for when we record now. So it's, again, more spontaneous, like that Praetorian Jack joke I made.
That was a neat slapper.
Insert here if I can remember it. I won't.
One of these days, maybe.
Yeah, one of these days, 3 videos from now, I'll be like, hey, you remember that Praetorian Jack character? But anyway, yeah, this is a 7 for me too. I feel like it's a good film. It is not a bad film. It's not mediocre. It's not decent. It is definitely a good film. It's not a great film. It is not a masterpiece like Fury Road.
No.
As we said, it has pacing problems. It has a little bit of it has main character problems, and I don't get enough of the interesting stuff about the main character that I wanted to see.
Right.
There's ideas that are glossed over and events that are glossed over that are way more interesting than the first 45 minutes of this movie. I would rather have 45 45 minutes of that 40-day wasteland battle that put
Any day.
that put Furiosa in the middle of it as some
Yeah.
kind of badass character that kind of continued to like prove why she was Imperator Furiosa and like so invaluable to Immortan Joe and the Citadel.
Yeah.
Like all that stuff would have been better. You get a few solid action sequences. You get a pretty good chase scene with the war rig when she first meets Praetorian Jack. You get a pretty good scene in the Bullet Farm. You spend too much time with Dementis, and the time you spend with him is not spent making him more interesting.
Yeah,
It's just
fair.
it's just more about the politics and the battle of the Citadel versus Dementis and his goons and him taking over Gastown and Bullet Farm and stuff.
Right.
And Furiosa is just kind of dropped in the middle of that. She's not the one driving. She's not driving the bus, so to speak. You know, she's
Gotcha.
not driving the war rig.
Right.
That is the film.
That is the film.
Furiosa Mad Max Saga. And that's the problem overall.
Yeah.
But it is not a bad film. It's a good film.
It is.
I say if you got $15 to $25 burning a hole in your pocket, definitely go out and support this film. Like, do I want more Mad Max films? Yes.
Yeah.
I want to kind of get away from this narrative, though. I want to move away from Immortan Joe. I want to move away from the Citadel, all this stuff. I'll maybe take it a little bit more into the future, make it 20 years later or something like that, a much older Mad Max or something like that.
Yeah, let's see where he went after he left the Citadel that day when he kind of nodded goodbye to her.
Yeah.
What's
well,
Max up
yeah,
to these
do,
days?
Yeah. Do I want to see George Miller do and continue on with the series and do
Yes.
more creative stuff with this film and get away from the Furiosa, again, Citadel, all this kind of stuff, War Boys, like that narrative? Yeah, I want to see. I think there's some more meat on this bone, because again, this is a visually stunning film. There's a lot of good action. There's a few edge of cringe effects and stuff like that. That's a little bit wonky, but I mean, still, there's a lot of creativity, and I think there's still enough meat on the bones to get a new, fresh story out of this universe.
I would agree.
And do something different with it and get away from this. We've spent enough time in this part of the Mad Max wasteland. Let's see what he's up to somewhere else. Let's get Tom Hardy back.
Yeah.
And let's do
roll
something
with
about it. But for us, we're both in agreement that it's a 7 time. Anything else for Furiosa, Mad Max Saga?
I think I'm good.
All right, so that's it. That's it. That's it, ladies and gentlemen.
That was the Praetorian Jack joke. I'm just kidding.
That's it for this episode. Remember to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe button to help out the channel. Talcapes will return next week with Batman Hush Part 4. Finally, we're getting around to that, Todd.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching, guys. Until next time, see ya.
See you guys.